The quiet realization they might not say we're breaking up, but they'll let you feel it by forcing you to ask, am I a partner, or just a convenient solution? I didn't realize it after a massive blowout fight, or even a tearful late-night confrontation. I realized it after a simple, cryptic social media post. It looked like a casual thought, a fleeting mood, but it was the final cut, the one that went bone deep. Honestly, living with someone who nickel and dimes everything is exhausting. 30-something likes. A handful of judgmental comments followed swiftly. You need to break free, girl. A man like that can't provide for anyone. I stared blankly at my phone screen, and I didn't respond. Not because I couldn't think of anything to say, but because I had been silent for far too long. I didn't get angry right then. Strangely, I didn't feel rage, just a deep, penetrating chill running down my spine. It was as if someone had finally articulated the truth I had deliberately tried to ignore. This relationship wasn't built on love and passion anymore. It was built on utility and convenience. I loved her. I genuinely thought that if I was a good man, if I provided stability, she would appreciate it. But ultimately, I recognized I was just a safe haven, a place where she could live comfortably, spend without second-guessing herself, and then cast blame the moment she no longer wanted to share the burden of life. A silent goodbye the next morning. The sun hadn't quite cleared the horizon. I packed her clothes, every single item, folded carefully, meticulously, the way someone prepares luggage for a long journey, a one-way ticket. I placed a sturdy, wheeled suitcase right outside our front door. I didn't tremble. I didn't cry. I just felt light. Strangely, unbelievably light. Someone asked me later, were you sad in that moment? Were you heartbroken? I let out a soft, almost cynical chuckle. Sad? No. I just felt regret. Regret that I hadn't done it sooner. Some endings don't need a final dramatic conversation. They just need one moment where you look at yourself, truly look, and realize that you've been entirely depleted without ever having known it. And that was the precise moment when everything finally came to an end. The morning after she woke up later than usual that morning, I was still sitting at the kitchen table, quiet, staring into the surface of my coffee. When she finally walked out, her gaze landed exactly where the suitcase sat, next to the front door. The silence in the apartment was so thick, I could hear the rhythm of my own breathing. She looked at me, frozen for a beat or two. What is this? I responded slowly, keeping my voice low, without any trace of anger or accusation. It was just a statement of fact. I'm just doing exactly what you asked for. Living with someone exhausting is too much trouble, so I'm helping you find your peace. I wasn't trying to be cruel or cause pain. It was because, at that moment, I had nothing left to explain. What was the point of explaining, when she had chosen to share her deepest grievances with strangers online instead of the person sitting just a few feet away from her? She rushed forward, her voice rising sharply. It was just a throwaway feeling I posted. For God's sake, don't be so dramatic about it. I simply shook my head. Real feelings are shared privately. Feelings that need validation are posted on social media. She fell silent for a few seconds, and then she began to cry. But it wasn't the sound of regret. It was the sound of someone who refuses to accept failure. She accused me of being callous, of never having loved her. But strangely, I had never felt as calm or grounded as I did in that exact moment. I walked toward the kitchen island and placed her spare apartment key on the granite countertop. From now on, you can start over somewhere you feel comfortable and appreciated. As for me, I'm just choosing to keep what truly belongs to me. She looked at me. Her eyes weren't wet anymore. They had shifted into the hard, realizing look of someone who has just encountered profound loss. I understood that look well, because, for too long, I had always been the one who lost. And when she finally choked out the question, you really want me to go? I answered, my voice so soft it was almost just for the two of us. I never wanted you to go. It's just, I can't hold on to someone who already chose to leave long ago. It was the first time in months I had actually spoken my true mind. The final standoff after that last statement, the house fell into an unbearable silence. Not the comfortable kind, but a suffocating emotional stillness, forcing both of us to confront what we had desperately tried to avoid. She stopped crying. She just stood there, staring at me, her eyes moving from shock to slow-building resentment. So, this is it. You're actually choosing to walk away? She asked, her voice small but brimming with suppressed fury. I didn't answer immediately. I broke eye contact, gently setting my coffee mug down. I spoke slowly. I'm not walking away from you. You are just going exactly where you wanted to be, and me. I'm just opening the door. She gave a thin, bitter smile. that half smirk of someone who refuses to be forced into the losing position. You think this makes you strong, or are you just trying to prove I was wrong? I met her gaze directly, refusing to flinch. No, I'm just proving that, from now on, I won't have to live in silence anymore. In that moment, I didn't feel like I was talking to my girlfriend. I saw a person desperate to hold on to something that no longer belonged to her, not love, but convenience. She took a step closer, as if checking if my resolve was truly unbreakable. If I told you right now that I need you, what would you say? I closed my eyes for a slow, heavy second, and when I opened them, my answer was soft, but crystal clear. You need someone to make your life easier, and I need someone who makes me feel worth the effort. She stopped dead. No more arguing, no rising voice, just stillness, and in her eyes, for the first time, I didn't see a reaction. I saw acknowledgement. Maybe people aren't truly hurt when they cry. They are hurt when they finally fall silent. I turned and walked further into the apartment, not to avoid her, but so that I could take a deep, calm breath. A sense of peace I realized I had forgotten existed. Before I fully left the room, I added one final statement. It wasn't meant to wound, but to firmly close a chapter that should have ended long ago. I chose to stay, even after you didn't want me anymore. Today, I'm just giving you back your choice. She didn't respond, and that silence, it was the clearest answer of all. The public reckoning after her silence. The apartment tried to settle back into its routine, as if nothing had happened, but I knew the real ending wasn't just starting. It was about to go public. About an hour later, my phone started buzzing. A text from a mutual friend popped up. Dude, what did you do to Lynn? She just posted a story saying you cold-heartedly abandoned her. More messages followed, some advising me to calm down, some outright blaming me, others just curious. Not a single person asked what happened before the luggage was placed by the door. She was still sitting in the living room, staring toward the exit. The atmosphere wasn't tense anymore. It was heavy with the realization that this wasn't just a temporary feeling anymore, it was permanent. I didn't say anything more to her. Instead, I walked to my desk and pulled up the expense sheet and the list of financial responsibilities I had been carrying for the duration of our relationship, not to prove I was right, just to remind myself, if I caved today, tomorrow I'd be right back where I started. She suddenly broke the silence. You're actually going through with this? All over one measly status update. I kept my gaze on the screen, answering slowly. It's not just the status. It's that you chose to talk to the whole world before you chose to talk to me. She offered a forced, weak laugh. You know, social media is just a place to vent, right? I finally turned and looked her dead in the eye. If the feelings are real, people talk to each other. If the feelings need an audience, they post. The air solidified. She placed her phone down, her voice low but shaking. So, you're really going to let me leave? I gave a slight shrug. I'm just not stopping you anymore. A heavy sigh echoed through the room. Then, she started calling her mother, recounting her version of events with a dramatically choked-up voice. I stood up and walked out onto the balcony, not because I was annoyed, but because I was so used to being cast as the villain even when I was only protecting what was mine. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from her mother. The last text I read before locking the screen. Son, aren't you being a bit much right now? I stared at the words, and managed a sad smile. Being a bit much was letting someone exploit my goodwill for nearly a year, only to silence me with the word cheap. It wasn't choosing to stop. I put the phone down, and for the first time in months, I felt like I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. That was the moment. I finally understood. I didn't need everyone to be on my side. I just needed to stop leaning over to be on everyone else's. The final negotiation after the call with her mother, her demeanor completely shifted. No more yelling or sharp accusations. Instead, she sat across from me, her voice slow, deliberately trying to control her emotions. If I told you I never intended to take advantage of you, would you believe me? I looked at her, pausing before I answered. I understood this was no longer the time for debating right and wrong. I simply stated, I believe that, if a person truly values what they're receiving, they wouldn't make the other person feel taken for granted. She fell silent. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke up in a much weaker tone. I don't want to leave this place. I don't want to lose you. If that sentence had been uttered months ago, when I still held on to hope, I might have softened. But at this moment, I only felt that it was too late. You're not losing me today, I replied softly. You lost me. The first time you took my silence for granted. Her eyes welled up, trying to project deep hurt and betrayal. She turned away, picking up her phone to type a message. I wasn't surprised. When a person loses control of the narrative between two people, they often try to control how the world views that narrative. Just minutes later, I received a screenshot from another friend. She had just posted on social media, "Some people are terrifyingly cruel when they stop loving you," complete with a broken heart emoji and a teary-eyed face. I looked at the image, without anger. I just saw the stark truth. Some people want to end things in silence, others need to make noise to prove they are the victim. I slowly stood up, no longer looking at her. Before walking out of the room, I said, "You can tell the story any way you want. I won't stop you, but as of today, I am no longer a character in it." She turned back to me, and for the first time, she didn't have a comeback. And it was then that I knew she was finally beginning to feel the real loss. Not when the suitcase was placed at the door, but when she realized, this time, I had no intention of staying. The transactional termination the next morning, I was up earlier than usual, not because of restlessness or insomnia, but because, for the first time in months, I didn't have to force myself to linger in bed just to avoid confronting the person lying next to me. I immediately started organizing paperwork, utility bills, transfer receipts, every financial burden I had carried since she moved in. This wasn't for arguing or demanding repayment. It was simply to remind myself I had moved past the emotional stage, and this was the time for logic and cold reality. She woke up, a flicker of panic in her eyes when she saw me gathering the financial documents on the table. "What are you doing?" I didn't look up, answering sharply, with the detachment of someone executing a business transaction. "I'm organizing what belongs to me, and what belongs to you. You should start preparing for that, too." "Preparing for what?" she asked, all confidence drained from her voice. I put the stack of papers down, finally meeting her gaze, preparing to leave, or at the very least, ending the dependency on things that are no longer your responsibility. She sank into the chair, making no attempt to lash out this time, only trying to explain, "I wasn't trying to take advantage of you. It's just, living with you felt too easy, and I forgot to share the load." I smiled a smile that wasn't cold, just heavy with sadness and profound realization. The truth is, comfort that requires no effort. That is the fastest, most painful way people lose each other. She reached out and blocked my hand as I stood up. "What if I try to change now? What if I pay everything back?" I gently removed her hand, the action subtle but carrying the finality of rejection. "The thing you need to pay back, unfortunately, isn't money, it's the respect that was lost." There were no more arguments, no more fake tears, just a quiet, agonizing acknowledgement. Her palms were shaking slightly as she sat there, while I got up and walked into the bedroom, pulling out my own suitcase from the closet. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice rising, tinged with genuine fear this time. I zipped the closure of my bag, answering calmly, "Nowhere. I'm just preparing my part before everything truly ends. Unlike you, I'm not waiting until my luggage is put outside the door to start packing my bags." She fell silent, and in that moment, I knew for the first time, the fear in her eyes wasn't about losing a lover. It was about losing the shelter and the security I represented, and I realized, some people only truly panic when things are taken away from them. But for me, in losing this so-called love, I finally felt completely liberated. That afternoon, I had almost finished packing my things. For the first time since she moved in, I closed my wardrobe without feeling even a hint of hesitation. Regret only exists when there's still hope, and I didn't have any left. She stood by the door, watching me. No anger, no accusations anymore. Just tired. The kind of tired that comes when you finally realize you've crossed a line you can't walk back from. "If I could go back in time, I wouldn't pose that status," she whispered. I set my suitcase down and looked at her for a moment before replying. "It wasn't the post that changed everything. It was what made you write it." She lowered her eyes. No arguments, no excuses. Just acceptance. As I walked toward the door, I paused. "I chose to stay, even when you no longer wanted me to. Today I'm choosing to leave, because I finally learned how to love myself the way I once tried to love you." "So, this is really the end?" she asked, barely audible. I turned gently. "No, we're just stopping. At the moment we should have ended long ago." She didn't say anything, and I didn't look back. The door closed behind me not as an end to a relationship, but as the beginning of whatever comes next. It wasn't raining outside, but the sky had that quiet gray tone that almost felt like relief. I walked slowly, each step giving me back a piece of peace I hadn't felt in a very long time. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone buzzed. A message from her. "Thank you for loving me the way you did. I just wish I'd realized it before I stopped being the one you loved." I looked at those words and smiled, softly. Sometimes, the way people end a story says more than how they started it. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because I finally didn't have to explain myself to anyone anymore. I just sent one final message, not to hold on, not to hurt, simply to close this for good. I hope you find peace. The way I've decided to find mine is when the story truly ended.